Hey, reading group. We're going to start this week by talking about it's actually a whole new module. And so this is week 1 of module 10. And it's about communication and how communication has changed over time. And even our communication has changed this year, hasn't it, kiddos? Because we were communicating in class and you were experiencing a lot of different ways of learning. And now our communication on how we are interacting with each other has even changed, right? So you can make a connection of your own with this unit. Anyway, let's get started. So this week it's called Communication Nation is our what we're going to be talking about. And if you were looking in your textbook, it would look like this as well. And then it has write to understand, speak to be heard, read to grow. And that's a quote by Lawrence Clark Powell. And I want you to think about that a little bit. Write to be understood, speak to be heard, and read to grow. And remember in a video, I think last week, I talked to you about how reading helps us grow no matter what it is we're reading. And then I think that's the most important thing that you can be doing right now is like reading a lot of different and new things. When you speak, you should be saying things that are positive, right? We want to be positive and kind people, so we want to speak to be heard, but in a positive way, and write to be understood. So if we're writing things, we want to write things in a fluent manner so that our people understand what point we're trying to get across, right, kiddos? All right, so then our next part that we're going to look at is our essential question for this module. What forms can communication take? Think about that a little bit. Communication can come in a lot of different ways, right, kiddos? It can be verbally, it can be things that we hear, which is if we're speaking, people can hear it. Communication can be sign language, right? That's a visual way for people, especially people who are deaf. It can be media, which it can come across the television or online is another communication form. Newspapers, magazines, books. There are just so many different ways or forms that communication can take. We have a video here that I want to watch with you guys, play, and the video is going to explore more ways about communication. All right.
People are born to communicate. Usually, we just speak face to face. But it's not always possible for everyone to hear what you're saying. And what if you need to communicate at a distance? In an emergency, ships can use flags to send messages. Of course, if you're not in a hurry, you can correspond through the mail. But most of the time, we're able to communicate using technologies invented about 150 years ago. Radio allows us to receive news and information that are broadcast from large antennas on the ground or satellites orbiting the Earth. The telephone made it possible to speak directly with someone on the other side of the planet. And over the last 20 years, wireless technology has allowed us to communicate from just about anywhere. Computers and smartphones allow us to read news, publications, and blogs, and to catch up with friends and family over social media. We can even become active participants in sharing events as they happen. Remarkably, we're even able to communicate with a few other species.
Oh.
Sort of. How do you communicate throughout the day?
Okay, so think about that a little bit, kiddos. How do we communicate throughout the day? Well, right now we're communicating verbally, like with people in our homes, right? Maybe through Zoom, through things online, maybe over the telephone. So we're communicating in a lot of different ways. And when we were in the classroom, we were communicating through our writing, through verbal communication, and we were doing some of the things too that were still through technology, right, kiddos? All right, so let's go on to the next part. So kiddos, here are some big idea words about communication. The words in the chart will help you talk and write about the selections in this module. Which words about communication have you seen before? Which words are new to you? So here's some words. The first word is broadcast. A broadcast is a program or speech on the television or radio. And then the context sentence, Robert listened to the radio broadcast of the concert. The next word is also is publication. It is also a noun. A publication is something that has been printed and made available for sale. My favorite publication is a newspaper that contains stories from local authors. Blog is also a noun. If you write a blog, you are writing regular and informal updates or entries on a website. The students created a blog about how to care for a community garden. Correspond, that's a verb because it's showing an action. When you correspond with someone, you exchange letters or emails with that person because those are going back and forth, right, kiddos? The class was assigned to correspond with their pen pals for the entire school year. And my fourth graders, they get, we did some corresponding this year with some veterans, and we wrote them letters and we got some back, and we also corresponded with some veterans who are currently deployed, or some service people who are currently deployed overseas in Germany. So right here it says write synonyms, antonyms, and related words and places for each word about communication in a vocabulary network. After you read each selection in this module, come back to the vocabulary network and keep building. Add more ovals if you need to. So this is in your textbook actually, kiddos, if you were going to do this. I'm not necessarily assigning it to you, but if you want to do this, this will be wonderful because it helps you have an idea of things that are what they were talking about as far as communication, okay? And that would actually be over here too, right? Communication, and then we had languages, and then advances in technology. And that is one of our charts with our that we'd be talking about. So here's some specific words about communication: broadcast, blog, correspond, and publication. All right, and that leads us to what I was just kind of showing you, our knowledge map, right? Review the words about communication in the knowledge map. Use your book to draw the knowledge map on paper. As you read the selection in the module, add information about communication. So you can do this in your textbook. This is actually just for you to help you. So if you do it, I would like to see a picture of it, please, and sent back to me through Seesaw or through Remind. If you don't do it, that's okay too, but I want you to still be thinking about these things. So here's what I had just shown you, but in your textbook. All right, so how technology has changed communication. And this is in your textbook also, and this is a timeline. How technology has changed communication. Timeline of communication technology. This timeline shows when important communication devices became popular in the US. So in the 1950s, they had the telegraph. In the 1850s, they had the telegraph. In the 1860s, the typewriter. 1870s, the telephone. 1920s, radio. 1950s, the television. 1970s, first personal computers, although not many people had those. 1980s, the original first cell phones. 1990s were the computers, and that's from my generation. I actually didn't start using a computer. I used it somewhat in college, when I was in college in the 90s, and towards the time my children were being born in the end of the 1990s and the 2000s is really when computers started to take off, and something big happened that was more available to people then too, which you'll find out in your reading. The 2000s, we started with smartphones, which most of you've never lived in a world that hasn't had a smartphone. And 2010, social media. So 2007 is actually when Facebook started, but it didn't become open to the public till later than that. 2007, it was just available to college students. All right, so then I will be assigning this to you online, the history of communication. So as you prepare to read, you need to notice and note 3 big questions. Informational texts give facts and examples about a topic. Authors of informational texts may present their ideas in sequential or chronological order. Informational texts include visuals such as charts, diagrams, graphs, timelines, and maps. Social sciences text also includes words that are specific to the topic. These are words that name things or ideas. So, think about the title and the genre of this text. What do you know about the history of communication? So think about the things that you already know. And we kind of went through that quick timeline too, so you have a little more experience than you might have had before. What are some things you'd like to learn? So what are some things that you don't know yet that you want to know? And then write your ideas below. So I do want you to do this. You're either going to be doing this part online at where I assign it to you, or you will be doing it in the textbook. All right, so here is build background communication. I'm going to do that on the bigger sheet than here, so we'll get to that here in a second. So before we get there, we've already talked about that briefly. I want to go through your critical vocabulary words for the week. So significantly, if something changes significantly, the change is great. The change is great enough to be noticed or important. The movie went on significantly longer than expected. Enabled. If you are enabled to do something, you are given a chance to do it. I was enabled in my career by my parents who believe in me, or who believed in me, I think is what it says. Sorry. Patent. If you have a patent for an invention, you are the only one who is allowed to make or sell that invention. My uncle owns the patent for the world's first twirling umbrella. Peak. A peak is the highest point of something in my neighborhood. Peak electricity usage occurs in the first week of August. More critical vocabulary words. Transmitted. If something is transmitted, it is sent electronically from one place to another. Unfortunately, the files you transmitted over the weekend were damaged. Now, I realize this is the definition for transmitted in this case. There may be different definitions on how you use that word, right, kiddos? And I'm sure some of you are aware of that, especially right now with things going on in our world. Plucked. If something is plucked, it is pulled away from where it is. My sister and I plucked some wildflowers by the roadside. Proposed. If you proposed an idea, you suggested that it was useful or true. Last night at dinner, I proposed the idea of adopting a dog. Influence. If you influence people, you use your power or ability to change what they think. Much as I tried, I could not influence my parents' decision. All right, so here is where I said we'd look at it where it was a little bigger. Communication today. Modern technology allows people everywhere to communicate. Today, people use email, text messages, and video chats to reach others quickly. Smartphones help people communicate using sound, text, and video. Computers and smartphones allow people to exchange information with little delay. Video technology allows people to have a conversation as if they are in the same room. Smartphones and computers help us communicate with people in a variety of ways. And we've been using some of those even in class with our different classmates and things too right now, right, kiddos? We've been using Zoom, a lot of the teaching staff has. All right, so here I wanted to talk about reference sources. So a dictionary is a resource that lists words in alphabetical order and tells what they mean. If a word has more than one meaning, it is included with each one. Like I had just talked to you guys about transmitted. Now, if it's used differently in a different context, it can mean something different than if it's an electronically transmitted thing, right, kiddos? A thesaurus is a reference source that lists synonyms, antonyms, and related words and concepts. A digital thesaurus and dictionary are on most computers. And they are. We can find those quite easily on a computer. All right, so the word great is an adjective, a quantity above average, more than average ability, a title denoting an important person, something that is worthy of attention. So those are all 5, well, there's 4 of the definitions so far, and the 5th one, informal definition, very good or wonderful. Here are some ways to use it would be used in sentences. I had a great time at the picnic. I'm related to the great Eleanor Roosevelt. The great wave crashed on the shore. Okay, kiddos, so this is where just briefly talking about where we're going to be starting this week. I will probably send out at least another video, possibly another 2, maybe another 1 or 2 videos this week to go through the rest of the sections. This is where I want you to start, and I will be sending out the lesson plan also. I'm not sure I'll have all the videos on the lesson plan to begin with, but I will send you out links to make sure that you have that following anything else. I will assign everything on HMH, so you'll be able to find it there other than these videos, which if I don't send them all out to begin with, you will have links to them, so you'll be able to watch them and follow along. I hope you are all well, and I really miss you all. Talk with you later.